Kathy. I'm so excited to have you here today.
So glad to be here, Maria. Can't wait to chat with you.
So, how did you become the plant lady you are today?
So I think I've always loved plants, being around plants. It was, several years ago when you get your own place, your own condo, your own home.
Hmm.
That's when you really go crazy, right?
Yeah,
Even if you
totally.
always love plants and being around plants, then you're like, oh, I got my own space.
Hmm.
I can buy a couple plants for a windowsill. And then I started to spread out into the condo main or common areas, right? And the condo board was like, Kathy, that doesn't belong to you. So I got my hand slapped. And so I said, I need to find a space of my own to garden in. So I found a small house, little small urban garden. And then I went gardening crazy from then on out because I just tore out all the lawn, filled it in with as many plants as I possibly could.
Wow. So, what did you do before you were a full-time plant lady?
So my background is journalism, and I was working for different trade and different associations, different societies. One was in running and fitness, one was a school supply, one was for
Hmm.
practical nurses. So basically doing their publications, their website, helping to run their trade shows. And so almost all membership background and
Got
doing
it.
that.
And that's perfect for you now to have your own podcast and your own
Mhm.
magazine. And let's podcast to podcast. Let's plug your show right now as well.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Garden DC, all one word. It's based mainly in the Washington DC region. I call it also the Mid-Atlantic, kind of New York down through the Carolinas and out through to Ohio, mainly zone 6, 7. But we have listeners from all over the world, even if we're a niche for the Mid-Atlantic East Coast. People relate gardening is gardening.
Yeah, doesn't that like throw you? I've been doing this for 8 years. It still throws me a loop when I go into my podcast hosts and it shows me the downloads that I'm getting in Asia and, like every country. It's really insane.
I think people, A, you're plant crazy or plant crazy. So you want to learn as much about gardening. But I also think some people are learning their English that way. A podcast about a hobby that they love is a great way to pick up English, especially conversational English.
Yeah. I think too, it was interesting. I was talking with some YouTubers the other day, and they were saying, yeah, like the majority of my audience watches my YouTube videos on their TV, like on the YouTube app on
Yep.
their TV. And I was like, oh, the majority of my audience listens to me when they're in the car or when they're in their garden. Like it's actually a completely different relationship with the media. Anyway, we don't need to nerd out about podcasting for the whole time. It's just always fun to talk to another podcaster. Ground cover. So, talk to me about your journey with ground cover. You're a ground cover expert. You have an entire book on the subject. Very niche topic in the gardening space. So, why are you so passionate about it?
Well, like I said, I got my little corner house. It was
Hmm.
all turf grass
Yeah.
on one side up to the foundation to the sidewalk. And I was like, mowing is for the birds. I'm not doing this.
Okay.
And so I ripped out everything I could. And if it said crazy spreader takes over the world, borderline aggressive invasive, I was like, that is the plant for me. Those were the ground covers I tried out, mainly perennials, some vines, some of those types of things. And on the back side of my house, full shade under oak trees, completely covered in English ivy, which a lot of people are trying to fight. English ivy can be a great ground cover, but when it spreads and grows up trees and
Yeah.
fences and houses, it reverts. Once it gets to above that 6 foot line, it turns to heart shaped leaves and starts to flower and make seeds. And that's when it becomes an invasive vine. So I did a lot of experimenting, pulling back patches of the English ivy and plopping a shade tolerant ground cover in there to try to see what could hold its own against the English ivy and what might even be able to run over the English ivy.
To choke it out, kind of, or shade it out. What was your main motivation for switching to ground cover? It was just that you didn't want to mow your lawn?
Yeah, I just didn't want to. I have a slight slope in the front, and
Hmm.
it's a very busy traffic corner. So, A, not safe. B, where grass doesn't do well. There's a lot of places where ground covers are the better solution, where your turf
Mm.
grass is just not going to be ever happy, and people struggle to get that turf grass looking good. And I'm like, stop struggling, right plant, right place, right? And pick a ground cover, a different solution for that area. But also, I was just, as we talked about before, plant crazy, and I just wanted solid perennials, just full of flowers, full of pollinator plants. and attracting wildlife.
Yeah, so let's talk about a couple of the other reasons why people might move to ground cover. Because I think, I mean, even the other day, my husband was like, maybe we could do clover instead of grass. And I'm like, what are you, where did you hear this? Like, you are not a plant person. So, ground cover and meadows, not lawns, it's all very popular now. So, what are the other reasons why people might want to consider switching from turf grass to ground cover?
So, number one, your turf grass is probably your most maintenance heavy part
Yeah.
of your landscape, right? So, you're mowing it, you're fertilizing it, you're watering it sometimes, depending on your climate. And if you have a climate that is not hospitable, like the desert Southwest, why are you trying to grow an English turf grass lawn? That's ridiculous. That
Hmm.
doesn't make any sense. You're like fighting against your climate. So that's one reason people are just like tired of the maintenance. They want something low maintenance. That usually
Hmm.
will be the number one. Number two will be they have a weed infested area of their landscape. They're like tired of fighting these weeds, tired. And a good ground cover can suppress those weeds after it
Mm.
fills in after a couple years and again be lower maintenance.
Like the ivy you were mentioning.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can get down those weeds, fight back the invasives. We are using less inputs, so you don't have to pull out that gas mower, so more environmentally friendly. Depending on your ground cover, you're going to water it less, or at least once it's established, you're going to water it less.
Okay.
So a lot of people do that. And then we talked about a little bit, touched on pollinators and wildlife. So a good ground cover that's flowering, like the clover that your
Hmm.
husband suggested, might want to have it to help the bees, might want to have it to help other wildlife because bunnies love clover too. And I'm getting, speaking of wildlife,
Yes,
I
we have a
mean,
visitor.
this is Santino.
Hello, Santino kitty cat.
There you go. So that's my big boy, my senior cat. He's a Maine Coon. I'll hold him up a little.
Wow. Okay. He's a big boy. Oh, wow.
Fuzzy tail. Can you get the tail in the shot?
So,
Fuzzy tail. And you can see how docile he is. He doesn't care
yeah,
that I'm picking him up. He's coming for nap time behind the computer. There you go.
I love it. Yeah, my neighbor was saying she has clover and she was showing me she has really, I mean, she has Mimosa pudica growing as ground cover in her backyard. It's so cool to see. But she was pointing out the clover and saying, "Yeah, I grow this for the bunnies. The bunnies come and eat it, and I
Yes,
like to watch the bunnies, so I grow it for them." And I think too, people don't realize that a lot of ground cover blooms, and it's gorgeous. Like you could have a gorgeous lawn of flowers instead of green turf grass.
exactly. So some people will call it a bee lawn,
Yeah,
or some people will say a flowering lawn. That might
yeah.
be another way to describe it. And clover, you talked about the bunnies, a trap crop for rabbits. So if you're having problems with them eating your vegetable plot, give them clover because they would
Mhm.
much prefer that than to come in and be menacing your vegetable garden. So get them to go over there and get them something to support them. Plus clover is, nice to walk on. It's low
Yeah.
growing. You don't have to mow it. So if you can get like a mini clover meadow established, perfect.
Gorgeous. Is there a trap crop ground cover for birds?
Good question. I would say giving them a water source
Hmm.
always helps because a lot of times when birds are pecking at like the fruits in our garden, like our
My
tomatoes and things,
tomatoes.
tomatoes. So same thing with squirrels and birds. If they're pecking at your tomatoes, they're usually doing like they're scraping it out, right? Like you'll find
Huh?
that half
Uh-huh.
of they're not eating the tomato, they don't like the tomato even. What they're doing is they're trying to get the moisture. So if you can give them
Are
like
you kidding me?
yeah, a little moving water fountain, anything that's moving water, like or
Oh
fresh
my
water.
gosh. I had no idea
Yep.
because I've grown tomatoes for, I don't know, 5 years in containers. I moved to Florida this year. So I moved from zone 5B to zone 10B. It's been a huge transition.
Yeah.
I set up my micro dwarf tomatoes in my container so I can have a memory of home. These birds have descended. Every single tomato has a peck out of it.
Yep.
But I have these huge trees in my front lawn that are filled with birds, and I'm a crazy bird lady. I love birds. Like that's my retirement hobby is going to be bird watching. And I love them there, but I'm starting to resent them because they're eating all my stuff. So I need a bird bath. Oh, my husband is going to
Yeah.
be so annoyed with me.
I'd say any water, freshwater source that, especially if it's a bubbler,
Yeah.
They're attracted to water and movement, just like all creatures are. So that's good. And then giving them their own berries. So it could be like chokeberry, aronia, which is edible for you two. You can give them some low growing berries that you're like, these are for the
Right.
birds.
Leave me
Tomatoes are for
alone.
me. They
Leave
would,
me and my tomatoes alone.
yeah, they hate tomatoes actually. It's funny because nightshade plants they shouldn't eat, but
No.
they're
Yeah.
desperate for moisture.
Poor guys. Yeah, because they're it's so hot. It's so hot here in Florida. They're so thirsty. Oh my gosh. That's wild. Okay. Noted. This is amazing. So, why would people do ground cover as opposed to fake turf? Because that's us. Another thing people are doing is just,
That's like a stab in my heart, Maria.
yeah, tell me. So, what are the reasons there for people who are thinking about it?
So that's basically killing the soil microbes underneath.
Right.
That's just making dead ground. And maybe so you might have a pathway in your vegetable plot where you just want to lay an old slice of carpet or your artificial turf on that one slice. I can see that. But as far as just an expanse of artificial grass, that's basically plastic. It's going to break down over the years. People don't realize it is actually a maintenance thing. You have to vacuum it because dust and particles get trapped in there. Weeds can still grow in an artificial lawn when birds drop the bird seed and stuff out. And about the length is about every 10 years it should be replaced. People think it's permanent. So
Mm,
even I always say a brick patio, a concrete pad, nothing is no maintenance, right? You're going to have to do some maintenance. Some things are less than others, but artificial turf, I am just against as a chemical input into your landscape that just kills whatever the soil is
yeah.
below.
It's
So
totally
when the next
selfish.
homeowner comes and wants to rip it out and plant something there, yikes. Yeah.
We went to a party with a friend who did that because their argument was, well, we have dogs and it's easier with our dogs. Let me tell you, like, we were sitting on that turf, like having a drink, hanging out. That was smelly. Like,
I was going to say
it was
that pad
it was
soaked it
gross.
up.
So I would say go ground cover 100 times. Now, I would assume the number one reason why people might not do ground cover is because they think they can't walk on it. So can you walk on ground cover if I have kids and they're going to play around in the yard? Like, can it still be a functional yard?
Yeah, so it all depends on your ground cover choices. So, and I talk about that in my book, Ground Cover
Hmm.
Revolution, and I do rate them for walkability.
Okay.
So there are ground covers marketed specifically as steppables. So you'll see the steppables line or Treadwell. That's another line that you'll see, or you'll see people will use it interchangeably with ground cover.
Hmm.
So we were talking about clover, of course, fully steppable, bounces right back. Some of our native sedges and grasses, no problem with
Hmm.
dog and kid traffic. Maybe not so much the dog eliminating on the sedge constantly.
Hmm.
Not too many plants can put up with that. But yeah, so we do rate them for steppability and whether they'll bounce back. Most ground covers you can do occasional traffic, foot traffic coming through, but there's some ground covers that you wouldn't want to do constant. So
Okay.
sedums, like if you did a nice sedum lawn, you could occasionally walk in there to weed, pick out something, it would bounce back. But if it was your pathway every day between your car door and your front door, then no, you wouldn't want to put sedums on that pathway.
Okay. Okay. But that's easily accessible information, obviously, in your book, and it's going to be on the tag, on the plant tag as well.
Yeah, when we were talking about the artificial turf, another reason why you as a homeowner might not want to, if you love your trees,
Hmm.
so you are depriving the trees of oxygen they need for their root zone. So
Mm.
you're blocking that out. So maybe it's permeable somewhat for some moisture, but that's another great reason why people use ground covers is in the tree root zone so that their mowers aren't nicking the roots because sometimes tree roots are right at the surface and
Hmm.
you're injuring the tree roots or compacting them, but also to protect the tree itself. Like when
Mm.
you're coming with a weed whacker and people will whack the edge or the trunk of the tree. So having a circle of ground covers around a large tree really helps to protect it.
How tall do ground cover get?
So it depends on the ground cover. So my definition of ground covers is anything that covers the ground thickly enough to suppress weeds. Then that's a ground cover to me. But some people's definition of ground cover is low growing, like
Hmm.
below 5 or 6 inches. I will go up to a few feet. So could be taller grasses or perennials as long as they grow thickly enough together. Some low growing shrubs like ground cover roses
Hmm.
will be 2 to 3 feet tall, but those are considered ground cover roses and they're bred for that purpose to be a ground cover.
And you're not walking on those puppies.
Yeah, I would not walk on the ground cover roses, but they are a good barrier. I always call them a security barrier. So that's the area that you don't want people stepping into in your garden, like off the sidewalk or maybe under windows that you're like, nope, that's not for you to step
Interesting.
in.
So, how do I go about selecting the right ground cover for me? How would you recommend me kind of going through the process? What do I have to consider?
So you want to look at your amount of sunlight, your growing conditions, and what other plants are growing in there. Do you have tall trees above? Are you going under shrubs? So look at where you're wanting to select it and what other things might have been growing there before and been successful. And then I'm going to give a plug to my own little book, Ground
Hmm.
Cover Revolution. So I have profiles of the ground covers towards the back, which
Hmm.
describes each of the ground covers. But the most handy part that people find are the charts. So I'm rating the ground covers. It's so hard to show on the. There you
It's
go.
okay. Most people are
Yeah.
listening, so just
And
explain
if
it.
they're listening, there's charts rating them that say you want to pick a ground cover that's deer proof. You have heavy deer pressure, so maybe you want deer proof. Maybe you want something that doesn't need as much water, so drought tolerant, and you want something that does well in the shade. So you'll go down the chart and look at those attributes. Or maybe you have the exact opposite. You're like, I have a super wet, hot, sunny area, but I want it to flower for pollinators. So those charts will help you select a ground cover that will work for that too.
Yeah, I want all the flowers. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And why not? Now, what if you have young kids and you do want some turf for them to throw the football around? Can you do half your lawn turf and half your lawn ground cover, like
Sure.
just to mitigate, to at least relieve some of the pressure of the turf grass?
Yeah, I absolutely recommend that. And in the book, I talk about leaving that circle in the middle and
Hmm.
like kind of you got your beds, your perennial beds. Maybe you have a little mini meadow on one side, maybe your vegetable garden surrounding it. And as those kids grow, maybe the lawn shrinks, maybe it shrinks a
Mm.
little bit more. They're off to college, they're not playing kickball in that lawn space anymore, and you could then replace it with like a sedum ground cover that we talked about before. And so that'll be a nice low growing sedum. Looks just like a turf grass lawn when you're passing by on the street. All people see is just a green expanse, and you're able to walk across it and maintain it, but a lot lower maintenance for you. And obviously, don't have to water it so much. And maybe if you want to toss the ball a little bit, you can, but at that point, it's a low maintenance solution for you. But I always say start slow, like pick one bed at a time, one area at a time, and there's no reason, Maria, why it has to be the same ground cover everywhere. So you have your little turf grass patch here. Maybe next to the sidewalk, you want those ground cover roses so people aren't cutting through your lawn.
Hmm.
And then maybe this area over here is your little pollinator strip. So you might pick a ground cover, a native ground cover that is flowering. And maybe towards the back, something that's shade loving or that likes wet feet that's under a tree or something.
Right, because you've got to consider the sun and shade and
Mhm.
trees there as well when selecting. Can you talk to us about your patchwork theory that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, so that's basically the knitting of different ground covers. So it can be a matrix. So it could be layers. It could be a low growing one with a medium size or taller one that flowers part of the season, then dies back.
Hmm.
So really great companions for ground covers are flowering bulbs. So if you're in a region that's temperate, and especially that you can have your daffodils come up through it and then the daffodils die back, the ground covers fill in and cover that dying foliage, great. So I think a classic combination I always see are daylilies and daffodils. So like daylilies will dead back to the ground, daffodils come up. As the daffodils are dying back, daylilies come back up again. So that's your classic combination of getting
Would
that
they be
texture.
considered ground covers?
Daylilies can be. I've seen people plant solid fields of daylilies.
Wow.
It's not one that I recommend in my book. It doesn't make my top 40
Hmm.
because guess what? Daylilies are deer candy.
Mm,
So that's one that I didn't put in there. And so there's collector daylilies, really expensive, $100 plus individual plant daylilies. And then, of course, there's the common daylilies, the ditch lily, which can take over an area easily as a ground
right.
cover.
Yeah. Okay, cool. How do we go about planting, right? So say I have a existing turf grass lawn. Like I don't want to be an eyesore to my neighbors for a year as I kill the lawn off and seed and wait for the seed to germinate. So what is the process of this transition look?
So, yeah, it might be a little bit rough in the first couple years till things fill in, but that's the same thing as starting a new lawn, too. They'll have your little rough period. So, I always recommend talking to neighbors and a little bit of signage. You can say, I'm converting my lawn, little wild, being friendly to my local bees sign,
Mhm.
and bear with us. But it depends on the ground cover and it depends on your amount of time. So you can start with seeds.
Am I tilling all the grass up? Like how am I getting rid of the grass?
You can do a couple different ways. You can rent like one of those ground machines that roll your turf up like carpet.
Mhm.
Pretty cool. That helps. You can do the back-breaking way of taking a shovel and literally just shoveling it all up. You can till it under and start that way. I prefer what's called the lasagna or layer method,
Mhm.
and that's basically smothering the lawn that's currently there. And you would do layers of newspaper, wet that down, put a thick organic mulch on top. So that could
Mhm.
be pine needles, shredded leaves, whatever you have. And that decays underneath. And the good turf grass that's underneath decays down too. So that's all good green material. And you can plant the next season directly into it. So that's called lasagna or layer gardening. That's the least backbreaking way. And that's the best way if you're starting with small plugs or small plants, that you just plant them straight into that.
Into the compost that you put on top of
Yeah.
the okay.
Yeah. So it's a compost layer, a newspaper layer, and then whatever you weed whack down to the ground underneath. So it's just
Mhm.
all green layers. And within, like if you do that in the fall, you're able to plant new in the spring. You have a whole new gorgeous bed. The newspaper is gone. You just dig into there and you're like, wow, it's just gorgeous underneath. You
So
can
this
do it.
episode's coming out in the fall. So say someone in your area wants to do this. I'm covering my whole lawn in newspaper. I'm getting a big delivery of compost, or Espoma Organic is a partner of ours. I'm getting a bunch of Espoma Organic, soil, garden soil or compost. I'm putting it over it and then I'm letting the snow cover it. I'm letting it go
Yep.
to bed. I'm not
Yep.
planting anything in it.
Not planting anything. You can plant immediately. The one drawback on planting, say you wanted to plant a hydrangea shrub in the middle of that and make a
Hmm.
hydrangea bed, wherever you make a hole in that uncooked lasagna, the
Right.
weeds come up. The
Right.
weeds are
Okay.
like very opportunistic, but if you can wait till the next season, till everything's been cooked below in your little lasagna pan, so you can do it section by section. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do one bed, like an 18-foot, 20
Hmm.
bed 1 year. I will caution you, Maria, have a second person with you because when you do that newspaper layer,
It's going to blow away, isn't
wet
it?
it down. Like have a second person with a hose to wet that newspaper down
Okay.
immediately.
Okay. How many layers of newspaper?
So I used to say, because I'm in the DC area, the front section of the Washington Post was a good.
Okay.
Now it's so thin.
Right.
I don't mean to laugh about it. It's not as tragic that our newspaper industry is going downhill. But I say about 20 pages. So you can use newsprint. Some people will use cardboard. I'm not such a fan of cardboard as the lasagna layer because a lot of cardboards now are sprayed with a plastic polymer to keep
Right.
them from getting
Waterproof.
soaked. Yeah.
Okay. This is really interesting. Now, let's talk about plugs versus seed. What are the positives and negatives of each one?
So seed, you got a much bigger selection. So there's lots more things available by seed and a lot less expensive.
Okay.
So seed is great for that. So plugs, you're probably going to have to go to a wholesale grower. So say you wanted a native sedge and you would say, I want 2 trays of plugs. They got good roots on them. You're buying the roots. You're not really buying the little plant. You're buying that good root system. And it's a quicker establishment. And if you're trying to hold in a slope, if the reason you want a ground cover is because you're like, I cannot mow this 45-degree side one more time. I need
Okay.
something to cover this hillside really quickly and hold in the soil for erosion, you're definitely going to want to go with plugs versus seeding, right? Because
Because you
seeding
need
will
it to
take a while.
establish faster. Okay. Because those roots are what's going to hold the soil to allow for
Correct.
no more erosion. Obviously, with plant spacing, even if you're getting plugs, you know, if you seed, it might take longer to germinate and grow in, but then it's going to germinate and grow in fuller. If
Mm-hmm.
you're doing plugs, you've got to obey the seed spacing, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have a patchy lawn, you know, of these plugs that are 6 feet apart, right?
Yeah. So they could be 6 inches apart, 8 inches, depending on what the plant is and
Hmm.
how fast it fills in. So I do talk about that in the book in my ratings is it a slow spreader or a fast spreader? Do you want immediate within a season or two to fill in quickly, or do you have the time, the patience, what's your budget like to wait a few more years? And what some people will do is they'll put the plugs in, but they'll overseed with an annual flower. So you could do a nice annual flowering thing over that, wildflower that's annual in your area, and you just would mow that or weed whack that down as the ground cover is coming up into it, because you of course don't want to have all the weed seeds that are in that seed bank in your soil coming up to and out competing your ground cover.
Right, because I was going to ask, like, what do you do with the bare? Because bare soil is terrible if there's a storm or wind or something. So if you're doing the plugs and you're planting them 6 inches apart and there's obviously exposed soil, what do you suggest doing?
So that I would mulch in between. So you could just
Okay.
broadcast a good mulch, so that again could be your shredded leaves or pine needles, whatever organic material you have available to you as a good mulch. And you want a good organic mulch that adds back into the soil.
Hmm.
And then as it breaks down, your ground cover is expanding, so you don't want it to smother. One trick I saw, Maria, that this landscaper did that I was like, so genius. And I wish I had something upside down here. So you put a plug in the soil every, 6 to 12 inches. They put their little plant, and then they had to spread the mulch around them. That's kind of painstaking to sit there and
Yeah.
do around
Spread
each
it
one.
around.
What he did was he took the plant pots that they were in, turned them over the little seedlings. So each of them had their little cover.
Smart. Okay.
And
Like a
then
little hood.
exactly. And then he just broadcast the mulch or compost around them and then popped off those little heads, all the little hoods. And I was
Beautiful.
like, so much smarter. Work smarter, not harder.
What are the annual flowers that you would recommend in your zone, you know, five through seven?
Yeah, so I really like short growing zinnias.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God, that would be so beautiful. Like a lawn full
beautiful.
of short zinnias. Come on now.
Now, you could do marigolds, you could do any of the easy self-sowing annuals, but I like things that add to the pollinator palette, look gorgeous. Nobody's going to complain about a lawn of zinnia. And then the dwarf variety, again, so it's not shading out what your ground cover is that you're introducing.
And if you want to do the seed method, how do you suggest spreading the seed and what should I expect in that first season, that first spring, summer?
Yeah, so you're probably going to wet the ground down, and then you can mix if it's just a straight seed mix. So say it's clover, and they sold you a pound of clover seed from a farm supply store somewhere. You might mix it in with sand or some other mixing material. That way it's evenly spreading, and then you could use a seeder, the same grass seeder that
Right.
rolls,
Push
that
cart
same
thing.
thing. You could do that. There's also hand broth, which is basically like a scoop, and you just do it at that ratio. So
Okay.
I kind of like a hands-on approach, Maria. I like to
Hmm.
feel, like stick your hand in the seed
Yeah.
and kind of broadcast it. And you feel like it's kind of like, I feel like it's like feeding the chickens that like throw. But if you're an experienced baker and you know about throwing things on top of cupcakes and sprinkles and things, always one area gets more than others, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see what germinates after a couple weeks,
Hmm.
and then you come back and reseed.
And fill
So
it in.
here's a spot that you totally missed. Or say those friendly birds, Maria, from your front yard decided, oh, these are the best
Yum.
tasting seeds I've ever had, and they eat a bunch from that section. Then you can just come back and reseed in a week or so and see what's missing.
Okay. So with the seed, it's going to germinate. So you can have a full lawn of ground cover in 2 months, right? From the germination and the
Yeah,
establishment of it.
all depends on what type. So, like we were talking about with clover, If you did that in the spring, you should have it by summer, a really nice thick ground cover of clover.
Are there any ground covers that require the cold? So, like, you should spread them in the fall so it gets that winter before it sprouts?
Yeah, there's some native ground covers that like the cold stratification. They want that
Right.
winter process. Not too many that you want to do from seed. Most of those you would do from plug anyway.
Okay.
But if you are in a hot zone where you just want to give it a head start to establish roots in the winter,
Hmm.
before it gets hit by that blazing hot summer sun, then fall is a great time to start ground covers.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so disoriented in zone 10B. We're doing this interview in September. I mean, I'm going into my growing season. Like October is when we plant our tomatoes. What the heck? I'm
Yeah.
so disoriented.
And that's where I'm yanking mine out to make room for
Right.
cool season crops.
It's
Yeah.
so crazy. It's so crazy to me coming from zone 5B. What's your personal ground cover favorites? Like what's in your yard and what are your favorites to see people planting?
So I love what's called barrenwort.
Okay.
Horrible common name, right?
Yeah, ugly name.
But that is wonderful for dry shade situations.
Okay.
Does great. It's a slow spreader. It'll spread to about one good sized quart sized plant. It would spread to about 2 to 3 feet in circumference in about 3 years.
Okay.
That first year, that's a good thing to note, Maria, is that most plants are going to sit for that first year because they're establishing their root zone. So
Right.
you're not going to see that much spreading on the top unless they're starting from seed. But if they're a plug or a small plant, you're going to have to wait to the second or third year to see much expansion. So
Okay.
that's one of my favorites. I also love hardy geraniums. So those aren't the zonal geraniums that we're using like in containers,
Hmm.
but these are the hardy geraniums that spread by roots underground and make a really thick, nice ground cover, and they have a spicy scent to them.
Mm,
I love it. It's so good. It's similar to that's why the zonal geraniums have kind of that spicy scent too, but a little
hmm.
more subtle on the hardy geraniums. And those are, because of that scent, pretty deer resistant. Deer don't like
Okay.
anything with that, high fragrance. And another good deer resistant one for full sun, and this might be good for your area, is the herbs that are creeping. So creeping rosemary and creeping thyme. They
Yeah.
hug the ground super tight. Those are very steppable. So you can smush across them, run across them. They smell terrific. And
Yeah, I was excited to see Rosemary in your book. I'll never forget, I was in California and we were at some hotel and I was at the spa and they had slopes, two slopes that had stairs cut into them, covered in creeping rosemary.
yes,
The smell was exquisite, like for a spa, but also you can cook with
yes,
creeping rosemary. Right?
exactly. It's
So,
all
like,
the
go
same
out
info.
in
Yeah,
your lawn and get your rosemary and also thyme. And thyme has those beautiful little flowers too, and
yes.
also another gorgeous scent. Are there any like key mistakes that you see rookies doing that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, I would say just not matching the growing situation to the ground cover. So
Okay.
they're just wishful thinking, right? So
Putting
they'll
a
be
full
like,
sun ground
yes,
cover in a shade under a maple tree.
exactly. So they would think, I really want that creeping rosemary scent in my garden. I love it. It's great for pollinators, has great flowering and everything. But they have heavy clay soils that stay wet and would just rot out that ground cover. You need like a slope with good drainage, Mediterranean
Okay.
situations where they're native to. So matching that could be a tough one. And then also, after a few years, once your ground cover is established, not keeping it in check. And I'm going to like smack my own hand for that because we're all guilty of that, right? The ground cover is too successful. It starts to spread into another area and take over, and we're like, oops, we didn't mean it to go that way. So you just have to
Mm,
like maintain that line or that edge and be a good neighbor to your neighbors. So, say if you had northern sea oats, that's like a nice native grass, looks like oats, hence the name. But if you don't cut off the seed heads in the fall, it will reseed everywhere.
so you got
And
to mow it down.
correct.
So
And
it's like a
maybe you
meadow
want
that
to,
you have to
yeah,
mow at the end of the season.
correct. And there are some that you want them to reseed to get established, but then at a certain point, you don't want your entire place to be northern sea oats, I'm sure.
Totally. Okay. Really helpful. Well, this was so informative. And your book, if anybody is inspired from this conversation, your book, like the profiles and the charts are so helpful. I'm still renting, but when I buy, I'll definitely be using those charts in your book as a reference for myself. Where can people find you, your book, your podcast, all of your amazing things that you offer?
I'll hold up for those who can watch this who aren't
Yeah.
listening. So, Groundcover Revolution is the name of the book, and that is available wherever you buy books, bookshop.org, Amazon, your local bookstore. You can order it online anywhere or just ask at your local bookstore, and that's from Cool Springs Press, Quarto Publishing, and you can find me at WDC Gardner on most all social media, Instagram, on YouTube. I'm Washington Gardener Magazine, so I publish a magazine for the Washington, D.C. area, and Garden DC is the podcast, and wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, we'd be happy to have you as a listener.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kathy.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Growing joy.